A show of hands. Who knows the name Steve Hillenberg? Okay, a couple of people raising their hands. Raise your hand if you had a child between the year 1990 and 2010. Every one of you raising your hand knows Steve Hillenberg. Believe me, you do. Born in 1991 in Oklahoma, moved immediately to Anaheim, California, lived next to the ocean, had a fascination with the ocean, and the tide pool animals in the ocean. It was a very early fascination. Realized he had an incredible talent for art. In 3rd grade, his teachers would tell him, "You're a brilliant artist. You have a brilliant future in front of you in art." Oh, he was excited, but he had very conservative, very conformist parents who liked to tell him, "Artists don't make money. What a stupid occupation. There's only one kind of artist, a starving artist. There are no other kinds." So he gave in. And as he approached his college years, he moved away from art and began studying marine biology. Isn't that a respectable profession? There are no starving marine biologists. And as he was teaching students marine biology as a teacher, and he was good at it, he liked it. But he didn't really like it. He knew he was lying to himself. So in his 3rd year of teaching, he made a comic book for his kids to teach them about the tide pool animals. And he called the comic book The Intertidal Zone. But someone had to illustrate, someone had to draw these creatures in the tidal pools. Who do you think he chose as his artist? Right, himself. And now he re-engaged with something that he truly loved. Now he was doing what he wanted to do with his life. And he made a very scary decision. I'm not going to be a teacher anymore. I don't want to do it. I'm going to focus on being an artist. And he had a special interest in animation. So he got a master's degree in experimental animation. Can you imagine that? A master's degree in experimental animation. Went to work at Nickelodeon. And the company was called Rocko's, or the show was called Rocko's Modern Life. He was good. Became the director of Rocko's Modern Life. Everyone liked him. He had a talent, he had a gift for this. But in his mind were all those creatures he drew in his book, The Intertidal Zone. And if he could possibly make an animation of his own using these creatures. Yeah, he was going to be a starving artist. But he wanted to pursue this dream. I would like to show you all a picture of his favorite animation. Called SpongeBob SquarePants. If you had a child between 1990 and 2010, there is no way in hell you don't know who SpongeBob SquarePants is. None, zero, it's ingrained in your brain until you're dead. I don't think I missed a single show. It ran for 20 years. It is the longest running animated feature in Nickelodeon history. In 2004, he made a movie about SpongeBob. Brought in $140 million. In 2015, he made a second movie about SpongeBob. It made $323 million. Sadly, he contracted ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease. At 57 years of age, he died in 2018. When Steve Hillenburg died, the starving artist died a billionaire. Boldness has power, genius, and magic in it. That will never change. Which brings me to my last speaker. You know, it's interesting. There is not one, there are two people in this room, two, who knew me at 21 years of age. Right, Al? Right, Ed? Nobody else here does, but they do. So I'm bringing up one of my oldest friends. Now, if you remember, 2 meetings ago, I brought him up. Ed Lipinski, after a lifetime in publishing, where he was the home improvement columnist for the New York Times for the 90s, early part of the century. It seemed that was his role, to write about home improvement, a few cartoon-like books. But then he wrote a book this year called Werewolf on Madison Avenue. And this book caught on. Started to sell. People started to express interest in the movie rights to this book. And then my friend here shocked the hell out of me when he said, I've got 2 more books I'm working on. And everyone wants to see them. For the first 79 years of his life, Ed Lipinski was in a little corner. Significant corner, but a little corner. Now he's becoming one of the hottest writers in the country. I often speak about Anna Mary Robinson Moses, who you know as Grandma Moses, who picked up a paintbrush for the first time at 77 years of age and produced $100 million in today's money of art between the age of 77 and 101. I believe that 30 years from now, they will be referring to my friend as Grandpa Lipinski. Ed, get up here.
I'm not going to use that microphone. I got one here. And the reason I'm not going to use that one is because I have a lot of show and tell. I have to correct a few impressions. First of all, my books are not really taking off yet. I hope they will be. And that's what we're going to talk about. I did do a presentation at not the last meeting, but the meeting before that. And I talked about getting into self-publishing. That presentation was basically chapter 1. I'm going to try to give you chapter 1, 2, and 3 today, with more chapters coming up maybe in the future. And it's going to be a cliffhanger because I don't know how things are going to work out. I'll go back to what Steve said. I worked in publishing for many, many years. I worked as an illustrator first, and then as a writer. I wrote for the New York Times. I had 2 books published. Well, actually 3. I'm going to show you one of them today. 2 of them, I don't even know if they're in print anymore. One was the Home Repair Almanac, and the other was Tiling, a Complete Installation Guide. You can still find them on the internet on Amazon.com. If you type in my name, they come up. I don't even know if they're in print anymore. So Amazon, if you order them, they may say they don't exist. Anyway, so somewhere around after about 2001, my column died. Not because there was no interest, it's because the New York Times died. They were no longer publishing independent columns anymore. They dropped my column, they dropped the cooking column, they dropped photography and a number of other columns. Publishing had more or less for me died. And I thought publishing had become kind of a solid, old-fashioned way of working. It seemed like all the big publishing companies had been consolidated into 5 of them. The 5 were Random House, Penguin, Hachette Group, HarperCollins, Simon & Schuster, and Macmillan. And it seemed like that was publishing. How wrong I was. Somewhere around the pandemic, I realized I wasn't really doing much, and I wanted to have a sense of purpose to do something. Now, after my column had died for the New York Times, I sat down and I wrote a novel, and I had an agent who submitted it to different publishing companies, and it didn't sell. I wrote another novel. She submitted it to a number of publishing companies, and it didn't sell. I wrote another novel, and the same thing happened. And finally, my agent said, I'm getting married. I don't want to do any more agent work. So I put my novels on CDs, and I put them on a shelf, and I left them there for almost 20 years. And then somehow when the pandemic came around, we had the lockdown, I realized that I wasn't doing much. I wasn't having a sense of purpose, and I wondered how I could get that. I had been doing some acting, I had been doing a little writing, I've been doing different things just to make a living. And I thought maybe I could try self-publishing, because now in the 21st century, self-publishing had become an entity. And maybe this was the way to go. So I decided to self-publish my book. I had the books on CD-ROMs, and the trouble was I don't have a computer anymore, and the modern computers don't read CD-ROMs. What was I going to do? But I was lucky enough to be able to find a reconditioned laptop, a Dell, that did have a CD drawer, and I was able to take this and transfer my novel, first novel, onto a flash drive, and I found a company in Denver, actually outside of Denver, Parker, Colorado, where they do self-publishing. Okay, I'll show it to you. So I got the book published, and it cost me about $3,200 to get the book published. It would have cost me more if they provided the illustration, but I did this illustration, and it's published by Outskirts Press. Now, I thought when the book was published, this was in the beginning of a whole career, that the book would be published, it would be available on Amazon, and it would be in bookstores. Well, it is available on Amazon, it is available on barnesandnoble.com, but it's not in bookstores, because the self-publishing industry, or these little presses that publish, don't have the capability of distributing into bookstores. And my book is on Amazon, but if no one knows of me, how are they going to find it? How are they going to sell it? How is the book going to sell? So anyway, I was content. I said, maybe pretty soon I'll get up the money and publish another book and let it languish on Amazon. But then I received a phone call, and someone said to me, they left a message on my machine saying, would you like to participate in the Saratoga book fair? I thought what they wanted me to do was to come up and do book signings. But it turned out they gave a number. I'll get back to this. They gave a number, and when I called that number again, it wasn't a book signing. It was for a marketing company. It was Reader's Magnet out in California. And they said, we saw your book. If you want your book to succeed, you've got to do marketing. And now we're going to do some marketing. You've got to, first of all, get your name. You've got to become a brand. An author today doesn't just write a book. He, and I'm using the editorial he, even though we have a female writer. So, and I'm talking from my perspective, but this applies to women as well as men and any other gender that we have. And so we can put your name, we can get a website for you. It'll cost about $5,000. Okay, I'll do that. And so we did that. I'm going to give you this before we get started, just so you know who I am, in case you forget. You'll see what money can buy. You can keep these or throw them away. They make wonderful Christmas gifts. There you go. Yes. Everyone gets one, whether you want it or not. Don't worry, Chuck. I got one for you. This is an example of the marketing. There we go. I'll give you anyone who didn't get one, will get one later on. So anyway, they said, of course, beyond that, you should also have a website, and you should have your book reviewed. We can get a number of reviewers to review your book. That'll cost about $3,000. Now, when you get a reviewer, you're not paying for a good review. What you're doing is getting reviewers to give an independent review. And they only review the book if it's on electronic ebooks. Well, my book is now available as an ebook. So I got some very good reviews. I had 7 reviews, 2 mediocre, 5 5-star reviews. They said also, why don't you get an interview with Kate Delaney? That'll cost $1,600. So I had an interview with Kate Delaney. And then in addition to that, they put me on YouTube. They put me on Twitter. They put me on, I haven't even seen all of that, and Facebook. You can find me on YouTube by going to YouTube, Edward Lipinski. And you'll see me in all my splendor and glory doing a couple interviews. And they said also what you can do for your book is to make a book trailer. Now, the book trailer is a short 1-minute film which tells about the book, Werewolf on Madison Avenue. So I said, okay, what's that? That's another $600,000. You can see that the money is starting to add up. Had they given me this bill beforehand, I would have said, no way. But gradually, I started eating into it, and wait until you hear how much I did pay. So anyway, so we did that. And then they said, oh, for your books, you should be in book fairs. What are book fairs? Book fairs where they get a whole bunch of book dealers together, or actually promotional people together. They set up pavilions, a bunch of them, and they display your book. They don't sell the books. Now, this is unusual here. What they do is these are events where people come and look at the books, but they particularly attract people in the industry, motion picture people, publishers, and booksellers. And that's what the book fairs are about. So I was in the New Orleans Book Fair, I was in the Los Angeles Book Fair, and I went out to Los Angeles to do a book signing, and I stayed at the Millennium Hilton Hotel at my expense. And we had a book signing where we gave the books away. We didn't sell any, but I got to meet with the people. And then we had a book fair in Chicago. We had a book fair in San Francisco. I'm going to be in the Frankfurt Book Fair in Germany very soon, and my books will be shown. That is a particularly big book fair. It's the oldest book fair in the world. It goes back 500 years. It actually was started shortly after Gutenberg published his Bible. And that does attract a lot of people in the industry. Whether or not that will pay off, I don't know, because you'll hear that I'm paying a lot of money out, but I haven't gotten very much in yet. That goes into the final chapter. Then there is the opportunity for movie contracts. And what happens is, once my book was going out there, out into the world of publishing, I started getting a lot of calls from people. I got calls from agents saying, your book is really good. It'll make a great movie. But here's the catch. You have to write a screenplay. Now, of course, most authors say, well, I write a novel. I don't know how to write a screenplay. Well, that's no problem. We can provide you with a screenplay writer, but that'll cost you so much money. I have been offered, I have screenplays for as little as $5,000 for a screenplay writer and as much as $20,000. I recently received a call from an agent, and they said, Skydance Media Company is very interested in your book, and they would like to make a movie of it. And so they sent me a contract for $2 million. $2 million sounds good. I turned it down. Here's why. When you get a contract, when they offer you a contract for a movie, it doesn't mean that they're going to take the movie, your screenplay, and use it. What you have to do is you have to create a screenplay, and you pay a screenplay writer. And in this case, Skydance Media wanted me to have an acknowledged award-winning writer, which would cost $20,000. And then after the writer writes the screenplay, they submit it to the company, the production company. And if they like it, then they will buy it and give you the money. But there's no guarantee. So they would offer me $2 million. I would have to pay out $20,000. And then if they didn't like the screenplay, I'd lose the money. I didn't actually lose it. I had the benefit of getting a screenplay. So I turned that down. But the movie deals are not finished yet. We'll get into this. So anyway, back to Reader's Magnet. They had me publicizing my first book, and they wanted me to reprint it. And we did. It's available now, both in softcover and hardcover. We redesigned the cover. I didn't design this cover, but it's available. So it's out there. Still, it's not in the bookstores yet, but it's out there in Amazon.com and barnesandnoble.com, and also on my website, which you will see. So anyway, we did that, and then I talked about my next book. And now this just came out. It came out in time for the Los Angeles Book Fair. It's been out since about May. It is available both in softcover, both in hardcover, and it's published by Reader's Magnet. So anyway, you may wonder why softcover and hardcover. It's surprising that the hardcover sells as well, if not better most times, than the softcover. So people like that. In addition to that, my marketing company told me, well, if you have a book out, you really should make an audio book, another $5,000 or $6,000. So we are making an audio book. It's going into production for Werewolf on Madison Avenue. It's going into production this month, and it's been very instructive because I got involved. I didn't actually meet the readers, but I always thought when you did an audio book, the company just picked someone to read the book, and they produce it. But these people who were going to work on the audio book, the narrators, they all submitted an audition to me, which came over the internet, and I listened to it. And it's very interesting to hear 4 different people read the story. They don't all read it exactly the same way, and sometimes they're very dull and insipid, and other people are very inspired. And I think we found a person who I thought was very good, and I chose him. His name is Ed Ullman, who actually, when he was reading my book, Werewolf on Madison Avenue, I actually had to smile because he captured some of the humor that I had involved. And then I asked him to do an extended reading where he would do one of the dialogues that takes place on the mountaintop in the jungles of Yucatan, because I wanted to see how he handled 2 people reading. Anyway, so I chose him, and then he went back and replied to the production company that he would like to prepare for this. So that was way back in June, and he's been preparing, and now we're going into production for that. So that audio book will come out. This will also be made into an audio book, another $5,000 or $6,000. We've chosen 4 readers. I've mentioned one that I would like, but I also mentioned at the back of this book is a dialogue between 2 women. The reader is a man. I would like to see how he handles the dialogue with the 2 women. So that'll go into production soon. Now, I received another call about 8 weeks ago from a marketing company in Florida, Strat Advertising and Media. Notice I'm telling you, I received all these calls. I have not called anybody. I have not met any of these people. I've all talked to them on the phone. I've talked to them through email, written to them through email, but I haven't actually met these people. And so when you're making these deals with people and spending money, you really have to judge by the quality of their voice, by what they're saying. It's all trust. So far, I think I've been lucky. But anyway, these people contacted me, and they said, well, we like your book, Madison Avenue, Werewolf on Madison Avenue, but naturally being handled by someone else. But we noticed you have another book, a children's book, called Picasso, the Cat Who Wanted to Be an Artist. This is it. And they said, we tried to order it on Amazon. It's still featured on Amazon, but they say they don't have any copies. Now, I don't know how it got on Amazon. I didn't put it there. I didn't have any publisher put it there, but it was been on Amazon since maybe 1996 when Amazon started. I'll tell you a little about the book because the marketing strategy is quite interesting. The book starts off, when I originally started to do the book way back in 1972, and when I was just starting out, it's about a cat, a barnyard cat, who wants to be an artist. And the way I had the story written, he goes to the big city and he dreams of being an artist, and he learns to paint, and he makes these paintings, and he invites people to come to see it, and the critics come and they don't like his paintings. So he says, oh, well, maybe life was good for me where I was, and he goes back to the farm, and he says, this is maybe where I was supposed to be at. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. After Dorothy goes through the land of Oz, she realizes there's no place like home, and that was the message. But the publisher said, no, we can't do that. You can't tell kids to give up. You have to tell them to keep fighting. So I went home, and I had the idea. The cat paints a bunch of pictures, and no one likes him. And he has this great idea. He goes back to his studio and he turns the pictures upside down. And then he has another exhibit. And they love the pictures. So he's a success. And they like that. So they published this book. Young Readers Press published this book. It's out of print. And the media, advertising and media said, have you thought of republishing the book? And I said, well, I don't think we can do that because I don't have the original artwork. Now, in publishing before the 20th century, before the 21st century, when you did artwork and you had an illustrated book, what they did was they took the artwork in the production office, in the printing company, and they took a picture of it. They took 4 pictures with filters. So they separated the color pictures into black, red, yellow, and blue. And actually it's black, yellow, the red is magenta, it's kind of a purplish red, and the blue is cyan. And then they would print the book, and it would take all day to do that. And they would have a giant press, longer than this, about the size of this room. So it's very expensive, cost expensive, and also you need the artwork. I said, I don't have the color artwork. And they said, do you have a copy of the original book? And I said, yes, I do, in fact. They said, we can take that, and we can scan that and print it. Now, this is how publishing has changed within the last 20 years. Digital technology has made publishing so much easier. So we can do self-publishing, we can do color printing. So they said, but in addition to printing it, have you thought about printing it in your name? Now, up till now, I've had other publishers, Outskirts Press, Reader's Magnet publish it. But this time it was different. This time I became not only the author, here's the book published, but I became the publisher. How that happened, I don't quite know. All I know is that there's a company called Ingram Publishing, which will publish under someone else's name, will publish another author, and that's what I've become. This book is written and illustrated by Edward R. Lipinski and published by Edward Lipinski Books. Now, when we started to do the book and republish it, there was a problem. I said, yes, I wrote and illustrated it, but it was copyrighted under Young Readers Press. So if we publish it, we got to get the copyright. They had their legal department look at it, and they said, no, Young Readers Press is now out of business. You can now copyright it under your name. So we copyrighted under my name, and it's out there. And they gave me another website, Edward Lipinski Books. So if you go to that book site, it's not on my press kits, you can get this book and the other 2 books. They've linked it up for the other 2 books. And if you go to edwardlipinski.com, you can just get, they'll only feature the other 2 books. They don't feature this one. But they're all available out there somewhere in cyberspace. Okay, so then I got this. So this has been published. Then I got a call about 6 weeks ago from a literary agent, DC Literary Services in California. And they said, we like your book, Werewolf on Madison Avenue. And this is, when anyone wants to sell you anything, that's what they begin with. We like your book. We've reviewed your book. We've read 100 books and yours is in the top 15. We've read 1,000 books and yours is in the top 75. It's all the same. They said the same thing, Werewolf on Madison Avenue. They said, we'd like to represent you and we can get your book into stores, but there's a problem. We can also contacted people who do book streaming. Now, I never heard of this before, but you're familiar with video streaming where you go onto Netflix or something, and you can buy a package and stream a number of films. You can also do the same with book streaming. I never knew that. But anyway, they said, we have a couple companies who are interested. They're willing to pay you $5,000 to stream your book, but it's published under Reader's Magnet. And if they don't want to deal with an intermediate public, we can also put your book before film companies, but they don't want to deal with the intermediate. They want you to publish your book. Would you consider republishing your book under your name? I said, why not? Another $900. Yeah. So anyway, we republished Werewolf on Madison Avenue. And we started to republish it. They said, well, you want to just, I provided the manuscript. You want to just do the cover again, the same cover. And I said, yes. But then I looked at the book, and the book design is copyrighted under the Reader's Magnet. I said, we can't do that with copyright infringement. They said, that's no problem. We'll redesign the cover. I think they did a very good job. And it's significant. It's the same title, different cover, same author, but a different publisher. This is now Edward Lipinski Publishing. So I've known, you asked me before, I think, Chris, about what I wanted to, what I'm into, writing, publishing, everything. And oh, yeah, you want it? Sure. You can even look at them afterwards. I'll do better than that. Here are the three books. The first one that came out, second one that came out, third one that came out. All the same author, all the same text. No matter what book you buy, the contents will all be the same. The story is the same. The only thing is, and the author is the same, and the picture on the back is the same. But the one thing that's not the same is the cover. So, oh, my pleasure, believe me. So anyway, what all this means is that, so now they said, would you consider, we think we have some companies film companies that would like to buy or produce your book. But of course you have to make a screenplay first. We have a screenplay writer who will do a very good job, and our editors and our selection committee have awarded you a $5,000 grant for your book. But you have to pay the screenplay $13,500. But you have the $5,000, so you can subtract that. It's only going to cost you $8,500. I don't know about the finagling. I thought about this very carefully, and this time I decided to go for it. Now, the reason is they were talking to me about anywhere between six figures, a payment of six figures, which would be about $500,000, up to $1 million. I don't know, honestly, I'm not that optimistic. It's like when you're going on a blind date, the first rule of blind date is don't expect anything. And that's the way it is when you get into the film company business. Because what happens is you write the screenplay, and then the screenplay is submitted to the film companies. Now, this agency that I'm working with has at least 3 film companies: Sony, Universal, another picture called 5 More Hours or something, and a few others. And I decided to go for this because the literary agency is very, I thought they were very, I was very impressed with them. And this is a chance for them to make a big commission. So I'm doing it as much for them as I am for me. Whether or not it'll turn out to be good or not, I'm going to tell you in a minute, because there's another repercussion from it that is very, well, I think is very beneficial, or at least delightful for me. But last week, or this past week, Monday, I received another call. This was from a literary media agency, also from California. And they said that they looked at my latest book. Now, I haven't talked to you about that, but I will talk to you about that now. I have 2 books right there. The third book is being produced right now. It's called Echoes of the Past. It's a significant book because it's over 500 pages. It's almost 600 pages long. And the publisher, Reader's Magnet, said the trouble with that is if we put it in hardcover, it'll cost over $50. We can't sell it. So we decided to do something rather bold, and a little daring. We decided to break the book into 2 parts. Echoes of the Past, Part 1, Echoes of the Past, Part 2. It's not out yet. Echoes of the Past, Part 1 is just to be published soon. I think it's going to be out this week, in fact. The next one will be out in October. They'll be, both parts will be ready for the Frankfurt Book Fair in Frankfurt, Germany. Anyway, so this company called me up, and I was surprised that they called me up to know about the book because it hasn't been out. It's not completely in print yet. And they said, we'd like to represent you, and we can get your book into stores. We can get your book into at least 100 stores, maybe as many as 1,000. So that's, okay. So I said, they called me, and we were going to talk again on Thursday, but somehow we got mixed up, and we didn't talk. I didn't have their number to call them back. So I was in the library, and I sent them an email. That's where I do all my emailing. And I said, I'm very interested. But I'd like to wait until you actually see part 2 before you decide on part 1. Now, I have to explain something about part 1 and part 2. There are other books out that have in volumes. For example, John Dos Passos has written the USA trilogy. He's got 3 volumes. V.C. Andrews has written a book, Flowers in the Attic. It's, I think, 3 volumes. My book is not 2 volumes. It's a continued story. In these other books where they have volume 1, volume 2, and volume 3 or more, you can read the story and they're self-contained. But my book is about a woman who is 22 years old. She's just graduated from Berkeley, and she's never met her father. Her father had gone away before she was ever born, and she wants to find out why and where he went. She talks to her mother, and her mother won't tell her anything except there was another woman involved. So she gradually starts to track down, by going to associates, people who might have known her father, and she finds out he has a plantation, a rubber plantation in Malaysia, and she decides to go there to confront him. So she goes, against her mother's wishes, she goes to Malaysia, and on the way in Malaysia, she's kidnapped. And it looks like curtains for her, but at the last minute, she's rescued by a mysterious stranger. Her mother and her aunt come to Malaysia to convince her she has to go home. This is too dangerous for her. But at the last minute, she finds out that the mysterious stranger who rescued her was none other than her father. And now she's determined to go and meet him. She finds out his rubber plantation is very close. That's where part 1 ends. Part 2 picks up from that. So you see, it's not a continued story. If you read part 1, you never find out if she's going to meet her father. And if you read part 2, you don't find out how she got to meet him. So anyway, that's why this book is unusual, whether it'll sell or not, and whether this will be a cliffhanger that makes readers want to go from part 1 to part 2, it remains to be seen. But anyway, so this publishing company, this not publishing company, this marketing media agency wants to represent me and put the book into stores. Whether it'll get into stores or not, well, anyway. No sooner did I finish typing the email from them than I got a call from DC Literary Agency, who's handling the trying to get my book into stores, but is also trying to promote my book to the film companies. And they said, you here? We have the first part of the screenplay written for you. We'd like you to look at it. So they sent it to me over the wire. I read it. And if I had any doubts about paying $8,500 for screenplay, they were erased when I read this. It was very interesting to see a screenplay based on a book. Now, you can go to the library and you can get screenplays. You can get screenplays for Star Wars, but to see a book and how they adapt it to a movie is really, you can't see that anywhere. And I could actually see my book being transferred visually to a screenplay, how they cut parts out, how they added certain things and shaped it. And I've only got the first 30 pages, but it's really very instructive. It was very instructive to see my book being turned into an audiobook. It's very instructive to see it being turned into a film. So I wrote back and I approved it. Then I got another call right after that from a marketing agency in Florida. And I've been working with them a little bit, but they would like to put my book into the book fairs next week in Brooklyn. They want to sell the book. This is unusual because most book fairs, they don't sell anything, but they want to sell the book. In order to sell the book, I have to buy certain copies to give them. So that's cost me $900. But I don't lose the money. The books that sell, I get the money from. If they don't sell the book, they return them and I get the money. So I may not get the full $900, but I will get a lot of money back from it. So anyway, that's going to be in the book fair in Brooklyn next week. It's in Cadman Plaza. I probably will be there, maybe for signing. It'll be for all week.
Ed, 2-minute warning.
Okay. This is, and that's chapter 1, 2, and 3. Whether or not my books will sell, whether or not they'll get into the movies, whether or not I'll ever make any money back, that's what's coming on the next chapter. Maybe Steve will invite me back later, and I'll be able to talk about that. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your kind attention. Now, I have one more thing to show you. We have 2 minutes, but this is where you get to play. If you see this little card in the press kits I've given you, if you write your name on the back of the card, we'll have a raffle for this book. You get to keep this book. This is where you put the raffle tickets. You've got the card. All you got to do is write your name clearly and legibly and put your name in here, and you get a chance to win something. Absolutely free.
Only beautiful women allowed to draw.
Diana? I like reading.
Okay. Way to go, Diana.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attention.
Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. I want to end with a story about my hero who should be everyone's hero. 1909, in Atlanta, Kansas, a young man was born. About the most unspectacular, untalented bit of mediocrity in any human being you can possibly imagine. Matter of fact, he was unpopular enough in school, untalented enough in grade school, and unremarkable in any way, he got the unenviable job of coming early to class to light the potbelly stove and make the room heated for the teachers and his classmates. And he walked 2 miles every day as a 6-year-old to get to the school and light the potbelly stove. Well, one day, someone mixed up kerosene and gasoline. That's a bad mix-up. He lit the stove, and the room exploded in a fire. And they found him 2 hours later, burnt beyond belief, unconscious, and carted him off to the hospital. He woke up 2 weeks later, and when he woke up, overheard his mother talking to the doctor, and the doctor saying, maybe it's better off we let him die. After all, if he lives, he's going to be a cripple. And no one wants that. The little boy remembers hearing this conversation, thinking, I'm not going to die. The hell with you. I'm not going to die. I'm going to live. And he willed himself to live. But even there, the doctor looked at it grimly and told his mother he's going to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. And crying, she wheeled her 6-year-old son home, knowing he would never leave that wheelchair, that this boy would never walk again. But she was a remarkable mother. She massaged his little legs every day while he sat in the wheelchair in the backyard, just hoping maybe one day some miracle would happen to her son. Well, a miracle didn't happen, but boldness did. And I'm not even sure if you're going to call this bold. Some might call it stupid. He threw himself one day off of his wheelchair, dragged himself through the grass by his arms, legs were lifeless, got to the white picket fence that surrounded his house, took one of the stakes of that fence and began climbing hand over hand, and wedged his arms on the cross posts of that fence to hold him up while his lifeless legs dangled on the ground. And then he moved his arms to the next stake in the fence, dragging his feet with him. And then the next stake in the fence, dragging his feet with him. And the next one, and the next one. And he did it around the entire house. It took him hours. He was exhausted. But he did it. Nobody knows why. But sure as hell was bold or stupid. What do you think he did the next day? He threw himself off the wheelchair, dragged his way through the grass, grabbed the stake of the fence, climbed up, and did the same damn thing, stake by stake on that fence, over again. And the 3rd day, and the 4th day, and the 10th day, and the 20th day, he did it for 365 days. And then a miracle happened. On the 366th, he let go of the fence, and he didn't fall. No, this is not a fairy tale. He didn't fall for a few seconds and then he fell to the ground. But he stood. Those lifeless legs held him for a few seconds. And he ditched the wheelchair and began walking with crutches. Oh, it was hard, it was slow, it was difficult, but he began walking to school. It took him an hour to walk to the school, 2 miles, remember, but he did it. And after about 6 months, 9 months, something happened. He didn't need the crutches. No, again, it's not the fairy tale. He took a few steps, he fell. He got up, he took a few more steps, he fell again. Again and again, he got up, took a few steps and fell, but he could take a few steps, and he could do it without using crutches. Is that a miracle? I don't know. Then he started to walk without falling. And then he made an amazing discovery. You see, it hurt him to walk. The fire had burned the flesh off of his legs, left scars. One leg was 2 inches longer than the other. But he discovered if he ran, his legs didn't hurt. And now he started running to school. And now he started running very fast to school. And now he started running to school faster than anyone else, joined the track team, and he became the best mile runner in Kansas in high school. That continued in college. And then in 1934, in Madison Square Garden, in front of 39,000 screaming fans, the boy who would never walk again, Dr. Glenn Cunningham, ran the world's fastest mile. When you discover in your life that boldness has genius, power, and magic in it, I promise you, you too, in your own way, will run the world's fastest mile. I will see you all in March.